Okay, then stockholders' equity. Now we talked about that. Stockholders' equity is comprised of two components: the paid-in capital portion and the piggy bank that I refer to as retained earnings. Okay, so with that, we have common stock. We have retained earnings. We have revenues. We have expenses. And we have dividends. Now you'll notice that I put the expenses and the dividends underneath the assets. I did that intentionally. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to make sure I have it on the left side. And you're going to see why I put it on the left side as opposed to the right. Now, common stock, retained earnings, revenues, yeah, that's a part of the stockholders' equity. Now, if we remember from chapter 1, common stock, retained earnings, and revenues all did what to our stockholders' equity? It increased it. It made it what? It made it go up, right? So when it went up, it caused my right side to go up. Now on the flip side, expenses and dividends, what did it do
Make it go down.
to my stockholders' equity? They what? Decreased it. So there was like an inverse relationship. So because these two have negatives or cause our stockholders' equity to decrease, we actually put it on the opposite side because of that inverse relationship. So we have assets, expenses, dividends on the left side, liabilities, common stock, retained earnings, and revenues on the right. So what that means is all of the liability accounts, all the common stock accounts, retained earnings accounts, revenues accounts are going to have normal balance of credit. Credit. That'll be our normal balance. That'll be the side that increases. Normal balance. Side that increases. Credit. Normal balance. Side that increases. On the expenses and the dividends, normal balance will be on the debit side. It will both increase on the debit side. So, for liabilities, common stock, retained earnings, and revenues, they will decrease on the debit side. Decrease on the debit side. And the expenses, they will decrease, like the assets, on the credit. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? So what does normal balance mean?
Inside the side of the account that increases.
The side of the account that increases. If you want to increase it, you put it on the same side as the normal balance. If you want to decrease it, you put it on the opposite side.
On the dividends, you're not putting dividends in our assets.
You're not putting it as an asset. I was just trying to identify what the normal balance are for the accounts.
Can you give an example using an expense or a dividend?
Okay. So for dividends, that would be the actual account name. Now expenses would be utilities expense, supplies expense, depreciation expense, rent expense, pretty much anything with expense at the end of its name. Revenues would be service revenues, fees earned revenue, rent revenue, commissions revenue or commissions collected. Those would be examples of what? Revenue accounts. Examples of liabilities would be accounts payable, notes payable, mortgage payable, unearned would also be an example of liability. Unearned revenue would be an example of liability because you are in debt to your customer for amounts they paid you for in advance. Those would be examples. Okay? Now, if you are still not a visual learner and all these colors is not really working with you, but you're better at reading and writing, what I do is I have an acronym. Let's see. And it's beyond the space. I have after eating dinner let's call Red Robin. Okay. So what that means is, if you drew a T account, and you put down, after eating dinner, let's call Red Robin. That would be your debit side for normal balances. And this would be your credit side for normal balances. Oh, assets, expenses, dividends, normal balance is
Debit.
debit. And the LCRR, liabilities, common stock, retained earnings, revenues, normal balance would be
Credit.
credit. Everybody got it?
Mhm.
Well, that's half the battle. Okay, any questions on that? Normal balance means?
That side, left side.
Debit means?
Left side, left side.
I only hear some of you.
Left side.
Left side. And what does credit mean?
Right.
Right.